We have to go online and
You should.
whatever.
You are live, but I don't,
Okay.
did you want to be?
You don't need your.
Do you care if I have my?
No,
I don't see it.
we can see you.
You'll, people online. Oh, right, because of that, okay.
So we're going live. This is Senate Transportation. This is Thursday, January 16th. And we're here to talk about stormwater funding. And if you could introduce yourself and give us your title. And we're yours for a little while.
Sure, I am Jen Callahan, for the record. I work for the Agency of Transportation in the Maintenance Division in the Pollution Prevention and Compliance section. So I guess I'm here to talk about our water quality initiatives and what we do. Water quality.
And an update of where we are in the process. How much have we done? Where do we have to go? That sort of stuff. We're, you know, some of the concern here is we look in the ag world and now we've got new orders saying we aren't as far along as we should be. And they've made suggestions about, you know, that we should rest authority and we want to make sure that in transportation, we're moving in a path where we're meeting the requirements that are out there.
So you're specifically probably talking about the Lake Champlain TMDL.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, you know, the high level overview, if you could do that, but also getting into,
Yeah.
you know, what, where are we in all that process? What have we accomplished?
Sure.
And, where do we expect to be in what timelines?
Okay. What I'll tell you is I have prepared like you said, a high level overview. I do get into those things, but feel free to, you know, ask me questions and we can delve further into whatever you want. I wasn't aware specifically of what you wanted to talk about, so we can definitely get more into that.
And if
at
you
any
don't
point.
have it all, you know, the data on that, if we could get that, you know, we're most concerned to know that we're moving along and doing in some sort of timeline that moves towards the goals that we follow.
Definitely. Sure. Yeah, so feel free to interrupt me if you want to know anything more. I get a little too glossed over here and you don't understand what I'm saying, or I will try. We have a lot of acronyms in the water quality world and I will try not to use them as much, but if I do and you don't understand, just feel free to jump in and let me know. Okay, so just to start off, talking about stormwater, it's we've been working hard to integrate it throughout the whole agency. So not just in one area and kind of being thought of in the process of projects in general. So just to kind of show where we have staff located, we have an environmental policy planner and policy planning in the intermodal division. And then in the highway division and project delivery, we have a stormwater engineer, and she focuses on supporting our designers and project managers in scoping, design, development, and permitting for stormwater infrastructure. And then also in the highway division, we have the construction management. We have a construction environmental engineer who kind of shepherds the projects or anything that has a stormwater infrastructure. He looks at actually more than just stormwater, other environmental commitments that we have through the construction project to make sure that things are getting built correctly, that construction BMPs are being followed, things like that. And then finally, the maintenance division where I live, we kind of inherit these things at the end and have to maintain them and make sure we're in compliance for kind of the long-term goals. They don't terminate. We keep them forever at this point. So it's our numbers are growing and we're getting more and more infrastructure every year. So within the maintenance division, like I said, we're in the pollution prevention and compliance section, which is made up of vegetation management and stormwater. I have with me Tyler Hansen. He heads our stormwater section. Tyler, you just want to say a couple things about your group there?
Just make sure you introduce yourself first.
For the record.
Yeah, I'm Tyler Hansen with V-Trans. I work in the maintenance section. Yeah, like Jen said, we have different breakdowns of where stormwater lives within the agency. I am in charge of the maintenance division. I have 2 employees, and we are working to train district staff and aviation staff on what environmental regulations we have. We have a small pot of money that we use to help maintain compliance. I think what else? Yeah, Jen's going to get into the details of what those permit programs are that we help maintain. Thank you.
So you're all familiar, I'm sure, with Act 64, way back in 2015. Can't believe it's been that long already. So as you know, it was really a lot in response to the Lake Champlain TMDL, and it's with broad suite of programs. Part of that and part of the phase 1 implementation plan that ANR developed for the Lake Champlain TMDL, they issued a TS4 permit, which is the Transportation Separate Storm Sewer System. And that is a stormwater permit specific just for us. We're the only applicants for that permit. And it's kind of, I'll get into this. It's an umbrella permit. It kind of brought in all of our requirements, federal and state requirements, into one permitting process. We have to reapply for that every 5 years to Agency of Natural Resources. They're federally delegated, so they run the programs. And annually we need to report on that, all of our accomplishments that we've made under that permit. So the things that are.
So are we at the end of, it's 5 years, if we're about 10 years out, are you?
We actually, well, you know, as you know, it takes some time to develop and go through public comment and issue a permit. So we're actually, I think we're in the, are we in the 2nd year of our 2nd permit?
We're in the 3rd year, maybe more.
3rd year. So we're in the 3rd year. So we're about halfway through our 2nd permit term. Does that make sense? Our 2nd time around with this permit. So in there is, you may or may not be familiar with the MS4 permit, which is the municipal one. That's what we were under that previous to this. It's specific to municipalities. In the state of Vermont, they're mainly the Chittenden County municipalities, also St. Albans. And
Hartford did too. Oh, we had
I don't believe so. I mean, that would be for sure more of a question for ANR, but to my knowledge, they don't unless it's new. St. Albans and Rutland are the 2 outside of Chittenden County that I'm aware of. And in there we do public education and participation, training, asset management, a lot of different things. Also, we have the multi-sector industrial general permit, MSGP, and that covers discharges from industrial facilities. For VTrans, that's our state airports, and we have some sand gravel pits. That's our sponsor. And then there's the state operational permit, which it used to be that it regulated discharges off of sites that created an acre or more of impervious. I believe it was a year or 2 ago that it was changed to, threshold was changed to half an acre to capture more projects. And that's the one. Often capital projects are subject to these, and they need to build stormwater BMPs to offset the new impervious that's being built. And then also part of this project, or this permit, are the TMDLs. So as you know, the biggest TMDL that we have to manage is the Lake Champlain TMDL. There's also, prior to that, we had flow restoration. Well, we had stormwater impaired TMDLs, which also were mainly small watersheds in Chittenden County. There's also one in Rutland, Woodbrook, and then there's a couple up in St. Albans, Redmond, Stevensbrook.
So does this permit include areas outside of that? Or it doesn't include the whole state, it sounds like.
It does actually.
Oh, it does.
So
Okay.
the MS4 section has what we call 6 minimum measures, which is there's a lot of things that come under that. That's the public education, participation, asset management. There's post-construction stormwater BMPs that need to be that we need to do because of those, and construction permitting and good housekeeping measures. We apply that statewide.
Okay.
The MS for the municipalities is specific to their towns, but we apply it statewide to the best of our ability.
Okay.
So it is a statewide permit.
My understanding is at some point there's going to be a nitrogen TMDL.
There is
the
the
Connecticut
Long
River.
Island Sound. There
Yeah.
is a nitrogen TMDL for the Long Island Sound. Yeah.
So are you, exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
So are you working on that? Like, is
So
that?
at this point, we do, and it's, a lot of it is with our minimum measures that we have to do. So part of the TS4 permit is we have to address really all impairments, to some extent. And it's about the extent of how much we kind of contribute, if that makes sense.
Right.
So, it gets into a long process. There's a lengthy history or discussion of what a TMDL is. And then within a TMDL, they have allocations, and in some TMDLs, you're specifically allocated, like the Lake Champlain TMDL, we are allocated a portion of that we have to implement. Other ones, you're not specifically allocated, but if you're in there and you're doing work, you have to address it as best as you can. But there's a little bit of a difference, whereas in like the Lake Champlain phosphorus TMDL, we have to create a phosphorus control plan. Also
Right.
the Lake Memphr Magog, just a little bit newer, not too much newer, but in the northeastern part of the state. I should
Well,
have
that's-
a map here you can look at.
Yeah. So
There you go. So, and then
Yeah.
you can see down in this area is, as you know, the nitrogen TMDL.
Right. So then just let me ask a question in a different way. So in the Lake Champlain areas, my understanding is that because of the EPA, that they require the state to do that.
Yeah.
But we're not at that point yet on the east side. So it sounds like we're working so that we
Yeah.
may not ever have an EPA requirement.
I mean, I don't want to speak, this is probably a better question for ANR, the specific details of how it's all issued, but we don't have a specific requirement of, you must do X, Y, Z.
Right.
In the Long Island Sound watershed at this point. But we do have good housekeeping practices, and there are, a list of things that we do that will help improve that
Right.
issue. But we haven't been, it's not the same as where in our permit, it specifically tells us you must, I'm gonna get the number wrong, but you must, it depends on the lake segment, but you must reduce your phosphorus inputs by X percent.
Right. Because we were not in compliance there.
Correct.
So it sounds like we're trying to not
Yeah.
get to that non-compliance.
Yeah,
Which is good. It's better to plan that way rather than to make a
Right,
mess
right.
and then have to clean it up.
Better than having a gun to your head.
Yeah,
So,
right.
Well, and it's just more expensive after you
Yeah.
pollute
well,
something. Yeah.
and we're sitting here today because in that Lake Champlain area, we do have set goals and
Correct.
Yeah, great. Thank you.
So, yeah, and I that's not, I'm not as familiar with the nitrogen. So if you really wanted to delve into that, it would probably be good to ask ANR
Yeah, I will.
about where they're, they tell us what we need to do.
Yeah.
So for the TMDLs, we have, as we were talking about, we have the two phosphorus impaired watersheds. You can see the large Lake Champlain. It's a large portion of the state, and we have a lot of infrastructure in there. And then the smaller Lake Memphr Magog. And then the other one, as I mentioned, the stormwater impaired watersheds, they're much smaller. They barely even would show up on this map, so they're not there, but we have to develop flow restoration plans for those. So to get a little bit more into that, so the flow restoration plans, so those were developed, they're a watershed approach of stormwater BMPs that we work together with municipalities who were also in these watersheds to develop this plan. And once these BMPs are implemented according to the modeling, we should be attaining water quality standards. So where we are with that is those watersheds, if you're familiar, are Allen, Bartlett, Centennial, Indian, Moon, Monroe, Potash, Rugg, Stevens, and Sunderland Brooks. Like I said, Rugg and Stevens is up in St. Albans, Moonbrook is in Rutland, and the rest of it is all in Chittenden County. We have completed projects in Allen, Rugg, Stevensbrook.
So it's a Stevens in Franklin, because there's Stevens in Washington.
It's up at St. Albans, yeah. Yeah, there are multiple watersheds or streams with the same names. Yeah, so we're currently completing final design of some projects in Potash Centennial and in Dan Brooks, and we're expecting to advertise those in early this year. So I think we're hoping construction's gonna go this summer. But that would be for the project manager to deal with or to talk more about. So we have to complete the implementation of all of these no later than December of 2032. And those are the flow restoration plans. And a lot of these are all really, most of these are standalone. It's a flow TMDL. We're working with flow and they're standalone. A lot of what we've done are standalone projects that have, we created a plan and then it kind of gets handed off to roadway and they create a capital project to build these. So if you probably wouldn't be able to see, but if you're driving on 89 in Williston area on both sides of the interstate near the Welcome Center, we have stormwater BMPs there specifically just for this. We did a project there. They're not super obvious, but if you know what to look for, you would see them. And so we're doing that same with Rugg and Stephen up there. So for the phosphorus control plans, we in April of 2020 submitted a generalized plan for the whole watershed to ANR, and then after that, we needed to develop four-year implementation plans. And so those get more into the details of what are we really looking at doing, where and when. We submitted the first one in October of 2020 and the second one this past October. And then we'll have two more we have to do. They're due October 28 and October 32. So this in the past, I don't know, it was a couple of years ago, when the ARPA funding came around, we were given money to build some stormwater infrastructure for the phosphorus control plan, and we are beginning work on a project Swanton Highgate PCIP, we call it, and it should be constructed next season. Sure, it will be. So that's also similar to the flow restoration plans, a capital project that is being built. And then where we are, as you asked before, so far, it takes some time after a construction season to collect all the data and analyze and figure out, how much phosphorus that we actually, reduced by. So as of the 2020, the end of the 2023 construction season, we had reduced more than 28% of our target. So we're on track. You could say a little bit ahead, but I hate to say that because as we go, it's going to get harder to usually do the easier things sooner. On track to where we will be, and where we need to be is by, I don't have the date there. It's no later than June of 2036. We have to have all of those implemented. So that's the TMDL deadline for the phosphorus control, or for the Lake Champlain phosphorus control plan. And at this point, as of our calculations, we're 28%. Work has actually obviously been going on since then, so we're probably a little farther, but we haven't been able to calculate that yet. And then the Memphremagog TMDL, we are finalizing the phosphorus control plan. It's due on April 1st to the Agency of Natural Resources, and we're on track to submit to them then. And then we have to complete implementation of that one by September of 2037. One thing that I will say the difference is, if you want to get into a little more into the details between the phosphorus control plans and the flow restoration plans, is the flow restoration plans, as I said, are flow-based. Phosphorus control is more nutrient-based. Water quality projects, which can be a little different. And so we're looking at not just those standalone stormwater structural BMPs. Those are actually the least favorable because they cost the most and they have long-term maintenance burden.
So what with the difference?
Yes.
Explain to me what the difference is between the two.
The difference between
The phosphorus
and the flow. So the stormwater TMDLs are flow-based. So the way it was done is that it was a rather than how to explain it. They use the pollutant of concern when ANR listed it. was stormwater flow. And so it's more about holding back the water, the
Mhm.
volume, and slowing it down. If you think of, especially urban streams, it's no surprise that the stormwater impaired waters are all in the urban areas. All that pavement, it makes it very flashy when
The
there's a
pavement
storm.
goes into straight ditches and then.
And it goes
And
right
it
into
all
the
just
stream,
goes
and so
right
the stream will, they call it flashy stream, it'll be really fast and really high, and then it'll die down really quickly. And so the idea is attenuating that, holding back the flow so that it can kind of even out that flow in the stream. Does that make sense? Whereas the phosphorus TNDL is all about phosphorus. And so that's a nutrient. So its flow has its place. If you cause erosion, you're going to send sediment down to the stream, and sediment is probably going to be laden with phosphorus, and it gets in that way. But it's got a little bit different of a focus where so some of the things we're trying to look for areas of erosion and fix those to keep them from eroding worse. We're also looking at fixing our road drainage deficiencies, which is great because, we've all seen it. We've seen it in these floods. When the whole road goes away, goes down the stream, that's a lot of sediment. And so trying to prevent those things from happening. So it's also a co-benefit for resiliency. So that's actually where we're focusing a lot of our attention and where we're trying to get most of our phosphorus crediting from. It's also more kind of bang for our buck, and it's things that we want to do for our roadways anyways. And we can
So-
try and build it into current capital projects rather than have standalone projects.
So if I saw a stream bank restoration thing, that's phosphorus. If I see some sort of a pond thing, that's probably flow.
Yes, I mean, you get both. So when we build these stormwater BMPs, they do both flow and water quality is what we call it, though that's more the nutrients. But yes, you're more holding back the water in a pond, let's say, versus so what you see in this picture is actually a gravel wetland, and it was a pond on the top picture, and then it was retrofitted to a gravel wetland, and what you can't see is underground. It's actually the water's flowing through kind of filtering mechanisms to get more nutrient out.
That was gonna be my question. So there are filters underneath,
Yeah,
filter system.
it depending on the VMP, we have different ones. We have sand filters, we have all sorts of different possibilities. And in one case, not to get to the details, but we've done some research with UVM on one of our recent sand filters to look at adding water treatment residuals to this filter media. Because the research is showing that phosphorus will bind to it and hang on to that. And so far the results are looking pretty good. So it's early in them.
When I see these BMPs that have the pipes coming up, what are those?
So Tyler does a lot more of the on the ground work, so I'm gonna let him answer the question.
So yeah, those pipes are for when there's too much water inundating the stormwater practice. The water starts to pond up above the soil level,
Mhm.
and then there's perforations in those pipes, and the water is forced down into the ground.
I see.
So the purpose is to filter through the soil media to get the phosphorus bind in the soil rather than just go to the stream.
I see. But if it gets too high, that gets it down into the ground, so there's no overflow.
Yeah, so like those pipes, it goes in the ground and then travels through the soil to the next pipe and then out.
This is actually a park and ride of the St. Albans. That we actually many years ago worked with ANR to retrofit to a gravel wetland to get more phosphorus treatment.
So, thank you. So towns and, other entities are looking at, doing more floodplain restoration projects. So
Yeah, they could be.
could they coordinate with you on that? Because there would be benefits and it probably would help you with the permit.
Yeah, actually, we just had a meeting last week, I think, with South Burlington and the Chittenden County Regional Planning Commission to talk about a possible floodplain reconnection project in Potter's Brook up there.
That's great.
So we have those conversations. I think, Tyler especially can say, like, he's spoken with a lot of municipalities that even, for all different kinds of working together, rights of ways.
Yeah.
It could, they don't just stop at the border there, So we'll work with towns, usually towns and watershed, or regional planning commissions or watershed groups like Friends of the Northern Lake Champlain.
Yeah, and the
Friends
River
of the Mad River,
Conservancy is,
different groups like that.
okay,
They'll come and we'll talk about what we can do.
that's great.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
We try.
So this is probably not a question. So we're like 28 to 30%, maybe just under a third of the way there to where they go. And that's with measurements that were, or goals that are set by A&R.
Mhm.
And does A&R, this may not be a fair question to you. They run these by the feds?
Yes, so they have the Watershed Initiative Group. Emily Bird is always happy to come in and talk. They do a report every year that they submit to EPA. And it's a status of everything in the watershed. So our information will be in there, municipality information will be in there. And it's kind of a scorecard of what we've done and where we are as a state. So I'm sure she'd be happy to talk with you about that more, if you're interested. And I think they published the report also, but don't go hold me to that. I'm not sure. So this is just kind of a very estimate. It's very difficult to get a sense of how much as an agency we actually spend on stormwater and water quality because it's so integrated into all projects, into maintenance. It's a lot of different people work on it. So we did our best, but it's just a representation of the funding that we see that we've done and we need going forward to the end of the Lake Champlain TMDL implementation. Yeah, so I don't know. there's capital projects are in there, and maintenance projects are in there.
And is it only go back to 2018 just because you decided that, or because of the Clean Water Act that we passed in 2015, we started tracking it and spending more money at that point?
Question. I think we were trying to not have it be too big. But I think the tracking of the funding was more accessible at that point. But as I said, it's still just an estimate. It's really hard to say. We worked really hard over the past, I'd say I've been with the agency since 2012 and we've worked really hard to get those, we call them those 4 pillars I talked about before, working together and integrating it in just how we do business. So it's not as much of we have to do a stormwater VMP. It's like, this is just how we build roads now. And so it's hard to really pull out our numbers because a lot of people, we talk with a lot of different people throughout the agency, from scoping to corridor planners to, project designers and project managers, to maintenance staff, and just getting this is more of a culture of this is how we do business.
And you've seen a big change in your.
I have, yeah. And we can see it in, actually, if we look at our accounting of the phosphorus over the past, however, I think, was it 2010? Is our base for the phosphorus control. We can see some of it is our data was just got better in how we accounted for things, but also how we do business, how we build our roads, how we do our maintenance has just it's gotten better. And so we can get phosphorus credit for just the way we do business now versus how it used to be. And that's why I'd say we are focusing on our road drainage standards, which is what we call them, and encouraging that this is just how we build things, so that any capital project coming through, we could get phosphorus credit for, because we're just doing these good practices as a matter of.
And is that part of when we redid the road standards? Is like, I'm assuming when we did them decades ago, water quality and runoff wasn't as much a part of that as they are in the recent rewrite, or that's happening now. I forget where we are.
So when I refer to road standards, so we, as part of our phosphorus control plan, we developed, they're not really standards that we have to use, but these are, if we clean out a ditch this way, clean out a culvert this way, build it this way, then we will get this kind of phosphorus credit. And so that was kind of it in my group, and have been sharing that with the rest of the agency, and it's been being adopted on how we do projects. So I think it's different than you're probably talking about the road and bridge standards, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's different than that, but that's not really my area, the road and bridge standards, so I don't want to speak out of turn. I do remember, a handful of years ago, having some discussions, more than a handful, probably 10 years ago.
Yeah. I think we were updating the map.
And there was a lot of
Yeah.
water quality considerations back then. There were some brought into it that weren't originally there, but I don't do that, so I don't want to get too into that.
Go ahead, Wendy.
Just a quick, so who decides what storm you measure to? How the 100-year storm used to actually be a 100-year storm,
Right.
and now it's 5-year storm?
That's a good question. I mean, the stormwater manual that ANR puts out, I believe, Tyler, you can tell me if it's a 1-year storm that they design most of the stormwater infrastructure.
Yeah, it
for?
depends on what kind of development we're doing.
Yeah.
If we're doing a small, we might be held to a 1-year storm. Bigger developments like airports, they might trigger the 100-year storm. We have to design our practices to.
Yeah,
So
it's obviously, it makes sense to start
right,
planning for the larger storms.
right. And I did, go ahead.
They bumped up their storm volume too.
Yeah.
So it used to be like 1 inch, now it's slightly over 1 inch. So
Oh, good,
ANR has changed their volume.
Yeah.
good. That's actually a better way.
Yeah, there has been an effort in the community itself, just in the scientific community, to look at what is really a 100-year storm now, what really is a 10-year storm now. And there's been an effort to update those.
And there's, instead of just a blanket 1-year storm is this amount, they have a map that says if you're in this part of the state, a 1-year storm might look like this.
That is great. Thank you.
So I don't have too much more. This is not for you to try and read up on the screen. This is just, I think you have a copy in front of you. This is our water quality fact sheet that we put together every year. Yeah, right there. And it's the one side is really a lot of what I just talked about. And then the other side talks more about some of the accomplishments we've made, some of the things we report to ANR annually. So if you're interested, you can take a look at that. And then we already kind of talked about how we collaborate and have partners. So this was just a little slide to talk about those different things, but we already did. So I can.
Just another question that actually is at a higher level instead of going deep.
I'll try.
What percentage, just roughly, of all of the stormwater management or implications is transportation responsible for?
That's a good question. Probably a better question for ANR. I think we're a small percentage. Do you know the answer to that? I feel like we've had conversations with them in the past where they said, V-Trans projects versus what they look at as a state. It's a small percentage. I couldn't give you that number.
Okay.
I would, ANR could.
It's not insignificant though.
Yeah, I thought it would be
Oh,
at least
certainly.
a quarter.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd be happy to reach out to ANR stormwater section, see if that's something that we could find out from them.
Thank you.
I think what they would probably be able to look at is like what percent of the projects and permits that they get are ours versus everybody else.
Right.
And
And just in general terms, it doesn't have to be exact, but
Yeah.
just in general terms so that we know.
So
What we're
the
doing.
training for, and I've noticed a lot in my local road crew and the local road cruiser. They're designing to a different level than they ever have before. The trainings and the help the municipals, do you do that?
so, well, we do have a Better Roads program, and I believe Joel Parago's coming in tomorrow to speak with you. He has that's part of his program is the municipal outreach. So it'd probably be a better question to talk with him about in the Municipal Assistance Bureau where he works. But we do have the Better Roads program, which has Better Roads Manual, And I think,
So in the measurement of where we have to go in overall transportation, is that separate goals for them than it is for you? Or are they together or?
so it's probably a better question to ask ANR how they manage and account this. What I can say is the MS4 communities, us being one of them, plus the University of Vermont is an MS4 and the Burlington Airport is also an MS4. We all were given specific targets, amounts of phosphorus that we need to develop a phosphorus control plan and implement and reduce by. The rest of the municipalities fall under the municipal roads general permit, which is it's different, and we aren't subject to that, so I'm not as familiar with that. They do have somebody at ANR who runs that permit who might be worth talking to. I don't know that Joel would be able to speak to it too much either, as far as that side of it,
But
how they do the
training
accounting.
of the local, and the practical work to get there to do it.
Yep.
The expertise around that comes out of transportation for the locals.
Right. And I can't speak for our training center, but I know they do a lot of trainings for municipalities. So there's that avenue too. So I think there's the local roads program that is under Joel's group that he could probably speak to tomorrow. And then there's our training center that also does
And
training.
would
for
he
municipalities.
keep track of, or would ANR keep track of their success rate?
Success rate. So that their phosphorus reduction.
Yeah.
Yeah, that ANR.
When the goals are set out for the municipalities and their piece around that.
Yeah.
And you guys do the training of them to do that. But who keeps track about, you're at 28%, who keeps track of where they?
ANR keeps track of that. So that would be where I would suggest to go to talk with them about, like I said, I think, the Watershed Initiative Program, Emily Burt, she has that report they do every year and it's laid out in there. So they keep track of that.
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you very much.
All right.
Thank you.
You're welcome. If you have anything else, let me know.
Again, it's good to see that we're making progress in a way that keeps that from.
Yeah, that's no trouble in one
Yeah.
side, keep us no trouble in the other one.
Yeah.
You have back trucks too, I'm sure, right?
That's back trucks?
Yeah.
The Vectors?
Yeah, to get the,
We
maybe-
hire that out a
we-
lot.
oh, you do?
We do have a couple
yeah.
where we use when we can, but we
Okay.
hire it a lot.
That you.
Those are actually
For the
hard to
truck,
get.
because you gotta maintain this. I mean,
Yeah.
you build it, but then you gotta maintain a lot of it and suck it out.
Yeah.
Oh,
You
okay.
see them? They're cool. We
It's
gotta
a
yeah,
big
they're-
vacuum truck?
Yeah,
find them.
They're actually hard to come by.
I know.
They get
That's-
really busy and sometimes, right? I mean, you can speak to it better than I
Yeah.
can.
It's
But
hard to
they're,
find people to hire.
it's hard.
Yeah,
It's really hard.
Municipalities have it even harder than.
Yeah, I think, some municipalities have their own, I know like South Burlington, some of the bigger ones, they have their own fleet. And so they can just go out and do it themselves. But yeah, it's hard, especially when construction season comes because they're all working on construction
Right.
projects, which is something we do is Ryan, we build that into all our construction jobs so that at least at the end of a construction project, we go through and ask them to do street sweeping and DI cleaning.
oh, good.
Where do they, all that sediment that they suck up, where do they put it?
It depends.
Okay.
Do you,
A lot of them have
Is it
yards,
Walking
like
like County.
pits. They're where they can dump it and it can all drain down in the pit. But a lot of times they haul it away and dump site.
Put it in a hole. somewhere.
Yes, yeah.
and when we hire for maintenance, when we hire out, they just take it away, right? And they manage it appropriately.
Yeah. When we've taken it away, we put it in a pit that's come up.
Well,
Managed.
yeah, I mean, if
Yeah, I
it has phosphorus, you gotta clean.
Yeah, you can't dump it in the. lake.
Yeah.
Yeah, no.
No,
Or-
the goal is to
or-
keep it out of the.
No, but
Exactly.
they also have to look at other, there's can be other
There's
hazardous
other
materials
stuff
that are in,
yeah.
in the soil, so they need to, I think I don't want to speak for those companies, but I believe they characterize this, what's in there. And then, if it needs to go to a landfill or if it needs to go to, it depends on what's in the soil.
We don't suck it out and put it in the landfill, do we?
I hope not. Well, we might.
Some stuff you might
99%
have
of the time,
to.
no.
No,
Yeah,
It's treated there again, isn't it?
no, I mean, I think whenever possible, it gets reused. Right, it gets,
It's pretty-
right?
The only time I know of trucking into a landfill was when it was laden with invasives and we had nowhere to put it.
Oh, well, that,
Yeah.
I understand, but generally you, like,
Yeah, a confined area is not draining towards a water body.
Yeah,
oh, okay.
That's what I mean by like a pit.
so that it doesn't drain out and just go into a stream or someplace.
But aren't there efforts, which is a different issue, about recycling some of the, gravel and other things that we put on the roads, because then it gets drained off and then you suck it up and then move it to a pit, but then you have another pit that you're taking it out to put it on the road.
Yes.
But that's a
You're
different,
correct.
different
That's-
than.
I don't want to speak to that one. I do believe that is a big discussion.
Go ahead.
Generally, since you manage these programs, just kind of a bigger question. Do you feel that you have adequate funding to meet the needs
Well, that's
or the requirement?
That's a big question. Do we have that? I mean, we've been doing okay. I mean, we did have that shot in the arm for the phosphorus control from the ARPA funding. I mean, that was $3 million
Yeah.
one-time funding. That was pretty great. We don't usually get to do things like that in our group. I think I'd say, I mean, so far we've been pretty adequate with our maintenance budget that we've been
Yeah,
doing.
big cost is the capital project.
The big cost is capital projects, and I'd say I let them. Yeah, I mean,
There's
we,
not some like upcoming clip where it's like, hey.
not to my,
actually,
I mean,
we're not gonna be able to meet these without an influx of.
and not to my knowledge, but those discussions are kind of had at a different level when they're talking about the capital budget program. I would, that's their world.
Sure.
Um,
But at this point.
But so far, we've been making progress as we've needed to. We're on track to complete everything that we need to. As I said, we're even a little ahead. Although I like that you say almost 30%, almost a third of the way, because I think of it as a little more than a quarter, but I like that almost a third.
You tell us you're at 28, but you haven't done the calculation for this year.
Sure,
You know,
yeah.
if you're moving along at that rate, you're probably 30 or so and.
Yeah, and I'd say, at that point, when we got the 28, we needed to be at 25. So yeah, it's well ahead. And I think a lot of that, like I said, is really a tribute to how the agency has been changing practices. Because we get a lot of our phosphorus credit just out of our everyday work, which is great.
I hate it when somebody comes in and said, oh, you're supposed to be at 25 and you're at 18 and
Oh, yeah.
then it all becomes an emergency.
Right.
And we never make good decisions when we're binding.
Well, that's why I'm also careful, it's 28. We have a lot to go.
right.
No, but.
But we're making progress as we should be.
Yeah.
Yep. I'm optimistic. We'll continue on that vein.
Thanks for the report, Kurt.
Sure.
Yeah, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I suspect the ag committees and natural resources are gonna have those discussions this year because with the order from the feds that they have to plant that one place or the other and it's never good to be in those places.
Right.
It's good to hear that we're doing okay. I am interested on the municipal side because that's harder. We have a lot of road crews that don't have the same experience that the state has.
Right. Well, and the stone line ditches, that's
That's a
That's
lot of what they're
huge.
doing.
right. And that is.
Well,
great.
and how the road gets crowned and all of that sort of
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah, and that they've been pretty good at just that they do anyway, just to, manage the water, but the stone line ditches are really a challenge to maintain.
Yeah, well, and culvert replacement and removal.
Yes,
And for small communities, those culverts become very expensive.
yes,
You know, they want to move to the box culvert and I know that at the end of, my road, they just changed a culvert, and it's $800,000. In a town of a few thousand people, that becomes, you have to name those. Those are big.
Yeah.
Those are big. Well, I'm sorry that, this morning was a little slower. We'll do better.
No worries.
But, I've enjoyed that, catching up on what.
You want to go up, Vlad?
Yes, please.